We are live.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the November Planning Committee meeting. This is a subcommittee of City Council, and I am the chair, and I am the Mayor, Kevin Davis, and we have, of course, a representative from each ward, a councillor from each of the 5 wards also serving on this committee. So, members, does anybody have a pecuniary interest they need to declare regarding any item on today's agenda? Seeing no raised hands. So we have 2 statutory hearings before us this morning, and we'll be dealing with them separately. We have only one item for consideration beyond the 2 development applications, and that is the minutes from our last meeting. So can I get a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes of the October 12th meeting? Moved by Councillor Sluss, seconded by Councillor Carpenter. Any discussion? Errors and omissions? Seeing none. Emma, would you please take the vote?
Thank you. The minutes carried on a recorded vote of 6-0. All those voting in favor are Councillors Sluss, McCurry, Carpenter, Van Tilburg, Sokoli, and Mayor Davis.
All right, so we do have 2 statutory hearings on the agenda today. The first one concerns an application in respect to 672 Powerline Road, and we'll deal with that one first. And the second one is in relation to a property at 380, 384 Erie Ave, and we'll deal with that one second. So these public meetings, they're held in accordance with the provisions of the Ontario Planning Act, provincial legislation. The purpose of the hearing is to discuss the planning application and to hear from the public either in support of or against the application. At the end of each public meeting, the committee will then deal with a recommendation, which is then considered for a final decision, usually at the next meeting of council, which generally is the last Tuesday of each month. The name of anyone who speaks in regards to any item will appear within the meeting minutes. Anyone wishing notice of any further proceedings regarding the application should also provide their name and their address to the City Clerk's office. We ask that members of the public in attendance today speaking to an item, please ensure that your contact information is entered on the sign-up sheet, the sign-in sheet located at the delegates table. So the procedure we follow is that the applicant, the party applying for the usually rezoning or official plan amendment, they speak first. That's then followed by a representative of our municipal staff planning department, and then we hear from the public. Everyone speaking has up to 10 minutes to speak, and that includes any questions that may come from committee members. The applicant at the end of all of that then has 5 minutes to provide clarification to any questions or issues that are raised during the meeting. So we'll now move to consider item 4.1, and this is zoning bylaw amendment PZ0323 in regards to 672 Powerline Road. So I'll now ask that the applicant or agent, if you would please come to the delegates table. And if you would, you see the red light? Good. So if you'd state your name, please, and then you can proceed to present your application. Again, you have 10 minutes.
Good morning, Your Worship. Good morning, members of council. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Nick Wood, and I'm with Corbett Land Strategies. We're the land use planning firm acting on behalf of 1650335 Ontario Limited. Next slide, please. The location and property, as you can see in front of you, is located to the southeast of Paris Road and Powerline Road. It's a existing single detached residential dwelling. The subject property has just under 1 hectare of land and just about 2.25 acres of property. It is currently used as a residential dwelling, and the property features some vegetation. Next slide. The application that's been submitted before you is to advance a zoning bylaw amendment application to establish employment-based uses and employment supportive uses. The plan in front of you is a conceptual plan of what potentially could occur on the subject property, but by no means is that the long-term vision for the property. The intent of the application is simply just to establish the uses and establish the marketability of the site, given the evolving employment uses that are starting to locate themselves in this area, and to being consistent with the official plan policies of the City of Brantford official plan. Next slide. In reviewing the planning policy, we looked at the provincial policy statement as well as the places to grow. The PPS establishes that a mixed range of employment, institutional, and broader mixed uses is to be directed to areas of employment. And these areas should also establish for opportunities for a diversified economic base, and then also support, protect, and preserve employment areas. The application has been found to be in conformance to this. The growth plan similarly looks to promote and protect employment areas, as well as improve upon underutilized employment areas. And critically, it's important to maintain the availability of sufficient lands to accommodate employment forecasts. The additional uses proposed within this application are seeking to do just that, and therefore it's in conformance with the growth plan. Next slide, please. What you see before you is the schedule of the official plan. The lands are currently designated prestige employment. As you're aware, these lands are part of the lands that were brought over when through the annexation of the lands from the County of Brant. So the city is currently undergoing its draft zoning bylaw review. The intent of the application is establish the ability for the property to have the permitted use just a little bit quicker. The proposed uses have been found to be in conformance with the permitted uses within the prestige employment designation. Next slide, please. The schedule in front of you is the existing zoning, which is currently subject to the County of Brant zoning bylaw 6116, and is currently zoned agricultural, and the permitted uses are agricultural based permitted uses. Next slide, please. As you can see, we're proposing to amend the existing zoning from agricultural to a holding prestige industrial exception 11. The exception 11 would establish additional permitted uses of automobile repair garage, convenience store, as well as service and rental establishment. Next slide, please. In coordination with city staff, we're also proposing the establishment of a holding provision to ensure that the city's needs and requirements are satisfied prior to the development of the subject lands. And this includes entering into a site plan agreement with the City of Brantford, ensuring that all servicing issues, financial or otherwise, are satisfied, and that a transportation impact study be completed to the satisfaction of the City of Brantford. And that is largely due to the ongoing environmental assessment and transportation assessments that are going on for this area now. Next slide. We are supportive of the recommendations put forward by planning staff and recommend that their endorsement by planning committee occur. We believe that the applications are consistent with the PPS and conform to the growth plan, that the application conforms to the official plan and specifically the prestige employment designation. The proposed application is seeking to establish just minor updates to the zoning bylaw, which again is in line with the city's efforts in their update to the zoning bylaw amendment. As mentioned, the proposed holding provision will ensure that the analysis of the ultimate development of the lands occurs in coordination with the city's ongoing transportation assessments. And thank you. That's it.
So members, any questions? Councillor Carpenter and Councillor McCurry.
Yes, are you satisfied with the staff recommendations
We are.
and all the conditions? All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McCurry.
Do you have an estimate as to when this property may be developed?
Not right now. I think it would be it's really dependent on the timing of the overall assessments that are going on in the power line area.
Closest access to city services would be where?
I think it may be power line once that is planned, that could be an option, but
Currently, the house would be on well water and septic.
that's right.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a couple questions for you, Mr. Wood. The designation is proposed to be prestige industrial, which I think is in keeping with the location of this property, which is kind of a keystone property at that intersection. It'll be sort of the entrance to that industrial employment lands area. So understandably, we want it to be a certain type of industrial development. And I noticed that you have asked, I believe you've asked for it, automobile repair garage. Is that really consistent with prestige industrial?
Through you, your worship, the idea, given the size of the property, is to build that flexibility. The official plan does have requirements to establish a higher level of urban design for these employment areas. So at the time of the future application, we would have to satisfy those requirements. So whatever use does come forward, it would still need to be satisfied. So if it were to be a service garage, perhaps the bays or the locations could be directed to the rear of the site, so not to impede the visual along Paris Road.
So what would your position be if we approve this, but delete that in the convenience store?
I think I would like to, I mean, I am joined by the property owner and my client today. Again, the site of the property is constrained to what can be done. And this exercise is really just to ensure conformance with the official plan, and we would agree with staff that use is in conformance. And then establish an updated zoning permissions for within the zoning bylaw.
Well, would you mind checking with your clients and perhaps in the reply that you have at the end of the hearing?
Sure.
Tell us what their position is?
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much. And of course, we will be calling you up again at the once we've heard from any residents in respect to this matter.
Thank you, Worship.
Okay. So now is the time for staff to have their input. Sean House, if you can come forward, please.
Morning, Chair, members of Planning Committee. My name is Sean House. I'm a senior planner here at the city. I'm here because we've received an application to amend the zoning bylaw at 672 Powerline Road, and it's to permit a variety of employment and employment supporting uses. The subject lands are located on the southeast corner of the Paris Road and Powerline Road intersection and have an area of approximately 2¼ acres and 154 meters of frontage along Powerline Road. Lands currently contain a single detached dwelling and an outbuilding, and those subject lands are surrounded by agricultural uses directly in all directions and a mix of industrial and commercial uses further west and northwest. Here's a photo of the existing single detached dwelling on the property. And a photo of the northern property line of the subject lands. You'll see Powerline Road on the right of this photo. And here's a photo of the western portion of the subject lands, looking towards Paris Road. As mentioned, a variety of employment and employment supporting uses are proposed, and they're listed specifically on this slide. The site plan, while highly conceptual, does illustrate that the site can accommodate a 1,400 square meter building with 85 parking spaces and 2 loading spaces. The lands are designated prestige employment in the official plan, and it is within the designated greenfield area. The designation permits employment uses such as manufacturing, research and development facilities, warehousing, distribution centers, as well as the ancillary uses that specifically support prestige employment uses, such as hotels, banquet facilities, restaurants, automobile service centers, and convenience retail, as the applicant has applied for. The minimum density target here is 25 jobs per hectare. These lands were previously in Brant County, but were annexed in January 2017 into the city of Brantford. Through the boundary expansion agreement, these lands continue to have the same zoning until a new comprehensive zoning bylaw is in effect. The lands are presently zoned agriculture, and the applicant is proposing the prestige industrial zone with a special exception number, limiting the uses to what was shown on the previous slide. No site-specific reductions are sought at this time, so no reduction to side yard or rear yard. And the holding provision that's proposed will ensure that development does not occur until servicing is in place and the appropriate studies and planning approvals have been undertaken. The lands are awaiting municipal service installation, and as such, a holding provision is required to restrict development until there's adequate provision of water and wastewater services. The environmental assessments looking at that will likely conclude next year. However, servicing in front of these lands are a few years away still. A transportation impact study is required to be completed in support of the proposed development that takes into consideration the ultimate use of the site and the planned transportation network improvements that the applicant alluded to earlier. And last, as shown on this slide, there is a Hydro One transmission easement over the northern portion of the site that parallels Powerline Road. And through the site plan control process, the applicant will be required to meet any conditions imposed by Hydro One, and also before any grading and development within the easement occurs. They've been circulated on this application. The development is subject to site plan control, which will allow for a detailed review of the proposed development, including placement of building, parking areas, and engineering design elements. I'd like to conclude that this application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, and the city's official plan. The holding provision will ensure that orderly development of the lands occurs when there's adequate provision of municipal services and appropriate planning approvals are in place. Planning staff recommend that zoning bylaw amendment application PZ 0323 be approved. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Slauson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Sean, for your presentation. Similar to what the mayor was asking in the previous round of questions, I'm struggling to understand prestige industrial would include things like car repairs, catering companies, convenience stores. Can you help me understand that better? Because that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yes, through you, Chair, the main use of prestige employment lands are those, research and development facilities as an example, manufacturing. It also permits uses that would support those types of things. So, if employees, as an example, needed for the automobile service use, if they needed some repair work done on their vehicles, while they're working, I would envision that as being something convenient and supportive of those uses, similar to a convenience store if they had to run out and grab something.
Okay.
It is listed specifically in our official plan as a permitted use in that designation.
Okay, I guess I sort of understand what you're saying, but it just sounds very loosey-goosey to me. You could fit anything into there. You could put an A&P store there because, well, they could pick up groceries on their lunch and then be able to take it home and not have to go shopping after work. Like, it goes on and on what you could make it be by extending those types of services that to me, the prestige part of it means, to me, this is a gateway onto Powerline. And that will be developed with industrial on both sides as you go down Powerline, I think maybe as far as Balmoral. But it's a gateway that should make a statement as someone's turning into that development, as opposed to going there to get your tire fixed. That just doesn't seem to make
So,
sense to me.
Councillor Celestia, getting to a
Okay,
question.
well, I guess I'm not really buying the fact that it makes things simpler for the folks. And I think, is that the justification you're using, that the uses can be something that makes life simpler for the people that are employed within that industrial park?
Yeah, through you, Chair, my analysis specifically looked at the uses that were identified in this designation within the official plan and doing a cross comparison of what the applicant had applied for. So in fact, we've worked with the applicant extensively to whittle down what they had originally proposed for a range of commercial uses that didn't quite fit in with that designation, and we came up with the list that's in front of you today.
Okay, thank you. And just finally, if I could, you touched on it, and that was timelines. I believe you said that the environmental assessment would be done this year.
Through you, Chair, I believe it's next year. They're looking to have that work completed.
Okay,
And then I would have to defer to Gary Peaver, Manager of Development Engineering for those
Okay,
timelines.
if Mr. Peaver could answer that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, through the chair to you, Councillor Gary Peaver, Manager of Development Engineering. Yeah, Sean's correct. The EA work is ongoing right now for the Powerline and Oak Park Road project. It's looking to get to council sometime in the next year. And then after that, it would set out kind of the timelines of when servicing and actual construction would occur. But that would not occur starting next year.
Okay, just in proximities, are we looking at 2 or 3 years, or would we be looking at 10 years? Like, can you kind of narrow that in a bit?
Yeah, through the chair to yourself, absolutely. So it would be approximately, I'd say 2 to 4 years. We would start seeing the construction and servicing going in.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, would gas stations, charging stations, car washes be included in the concept of garage repairs, automotive repairs, that type of thing?
Through you, Chair, no.
Really?
Correct.
No gas stations.
No, that's
You'd have a convenience store, auto repair, but no gas station service.
through you, Chair, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you. Welcome, Sean. You probably don't know the answer to this, but we have quite a road right of way there. Is there a plan to straighten out Powerline Road so it doesn't make that funny curve?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Great question, but I don't have the answer.
Mr. Peaver, care to venture an opinion?
Yeah, through the chair, to yourself, Councillor, that is something that EA is looking at. There is the transportation component of it. They'd be looking at intersection types and details, railway crossings, and other items that Powerline's going to have to look at.
Yeah, and the other thing that we talked about in advance of the EA was a roundabout at that location. That's part of the EA study.
Yeah, the EA study would have consideration for the intersection types. They may not detail exactly what that intersection could be, but would provide those options.
And the EA, has it been tendered and is it underway?
Through the chair to yourself, absolutely. It has been tendered and well underway.
And it'll be done as a Christmas present for council? Well,
through the chair, unfortunately, it will not be completed for Christmas.
thank you. Now, my other question is, when I look at this piece of land, I see West Brant with a Tim Hortons and a McDonald's restaurant on the same property. Is that a possibility for this site as well? The word prestige it's a little misleading, as I think we all recognize. But that's a gateway as well, and I'm just wondering if that's a possibility for here.
Through you, Chair, yes, the restaurant is on the list of the permitted uses.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Sean. That's the 10 minutes. So if anybody else has any questions, I'll have to ask Sean during the debate portion. Thank you, Sean. All right, so we've now reached that stage of the hearing where we open the floor to members of the public who would like to speak to this item. And so I'm asking, are there any members of the public who are attending the meeting either in person or virtually that would like to speak? If so, please come forward to the delegates table. Anybody virtually? No, nobody virtually. So I've got to ask this 3 times. So if there's any member of the public who is present today that would like to speak to this particular planning application, either to support it or in opposition to it, now is the time to come forward. Yes, sir. If you please come to the delegates table, and you can just go to any one of the microphones. So if you would push the button there, see the red light? There. So if you'd state your name, please, your address, then you'll have 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name's Aaron Shaver, and I represent ownership for the lands directly adjacent to it, to the property in question. And I don't have a comment, but more specifically looking for clarification. I see on the proposal that there's entranceways both on Powerline Road and Paris Road. We have similar visions for our property as the proposal here, and I was just wondering whether adding an entrance on the Paris Road side would have any impact on a future application from us for a similar design.
So I'll tell you what we do. So this is the part of the hearing where you can express your opposition to or in support of. Many times people will ask questions, and so we're not here to answer questions because we can't answer them anyways. But what we normally do is during the debate portion, a member of the committee will ask staff that question if you raise it. So do you have any other concerns that you?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Now, hang on, because there may be a question for you from a member of the committee. So does any member of the committee have a question for Mr. Shaver? Yes, Councilor Carpenter.
Just a quick one, Mr. Shaver. So you see your property being developed in a much similar way as commercial activity along that corridor because does your property abut both Powerline Road and Paris Road?
That's correct.
And so you see your property as future similar to this?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Or Mr. Shaver, just so I understand where your property is. So are you immediately to the east of this property?
That's correct.
Right. Okay, good. Thanks. And how large is your property?
Approximately 7 acres.
And are you involved in the block planning process for that area?
No.
All right. Have you done any planning in terms of what you want to have happen on that property?
No.
Okay, great. I'm not suggesting you should have, but I just wanted to know if you had. So any other questions for Mr. Shaver? Seeing none. Mr. Shaver, thank you very much for coming forward.
Thank you.
We'll be debating this within a few minutes, so please feel free to remain in the public seating area to watch the debate.
Thank you.
Okay. So is there any other member of the public who is attending today would like to speak to this matter, either in support of or in opposition? Please come forward. Or a second time, if there's any member of the public present today that would like to speak to this matter, either in support of or in opposition, please come forward. And for the third and last time, I will ask if there's any member of the public who is present today that would like to speak to this matter, either in support of the application or in opposition to. Now is your last chance to come forward. All right. So, Mr. Wood, you now have 5 minutes to respond to any of the questions or issues that have arisen since you last spoke.
Through you, your worship, I did have a brief chat with our client. He did advise that if it's the will of council to remove automobile repair garage to support the prestige nature of the designation, he would be supportive of that. Through previous applications, as noted by Sean, we did try to. The client was interested in having a garage here, but knowing the direction of council, so if there is interest of council to add that use back on, I mean, that would be supported by our client as well. But to your question, your worship, removing automobile repair garage would be supportive of our client,
Yep, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to say in reply?
through your worship now.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Wood? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Wood. Oh,
I have a question.
trying to sneak one in there just at the last second there. Councilor Van Tilburg, go ahead.
So you don't have any issues with automobile repair garage? You just believe that the will of council this time may not support it? Is that my understanding?
That's correct, yes.
Would your client be interested in gas stations, or do they have no interest in that on their property? Just curious, because I have people contacting me for a need for a gas station in that area of Powerline Road. There isn't one anywhere close. The closest one's Highway 24. The other one's in Paris itself.
The client would be interested of adding that to the site as a
Yeah.
permitted use through this.
Thank you very much. I was wondering, have you investigated, were you under the impression that there could possibly be a gas station under the garage provision that was there? Or did you know it was already not in this change?
And we knew that it was removed, but the interest of the client is having this zoning established as soon as possible. So like Sean mentioned, we did work with Sean to kind of whittle down the permitted uses to ensure that they are supportable and in conformance with the official plan designation. So that was one of the uses that was removed from the proposed list.
All right, I just think that is, if I was working in industrial centers, I thought that was a very good location as an entrance way in for such an activity. So you would concur with that?
Do you have a question?
That was the question. Would you concur with that?
I would concur that the location and the proximity to the highway as well as the emerging employment area would be a good location for this use.
Thank you very much, sir. Very much appreciated.
Right. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, members of council.
All right, so the public meeting portion of this particular application is now closed. If I can get well, first of all, Emma, can you please share for us the proposed resolution on the screen? All right, can I get a mover and seconder, place this on the floor? Moved by Councillor McCreary, seconded by Councillor Sicoli. Open for discussion, Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment to remove the automobile repair as an approved use. Seeking a seconder.
Do you mind holding that for a minute, and we'll see if there's any kind of general questions, and then I'll take any amendments. So does anybody have any questions? I've got a question for staff. How can you show us how extensive the Prestige industrial area is? Like, is it just this lot on the official plan designated for Prestige, or is it a much larger area?
To you, Chair, I'm sorry, I don't have the mapping available in front of me or to share, but it is a much larger area than just this property.
How far does it go to the west? Does it go like Doak Park Road?
Through you, Chair, I would look to Nicole.
Good morning, Nicole Wilmot, Director of Planning and Development Services. So the Prestige employment area is a much larger area. It extends all the way to the east to just Gulf Road, and then to the south just past Highway 403, and does encompass the Oak Park interchange. The intent of that designation really is, there's a couple of reasons really. Those areas are identified as areas that are highly visible visible to the public. So we do require a significantly higher urban design standard for those properties. But they also act as an interface between other land uses and a buffer between what typically occurs in the M2 zone, which is the much sort of more industrialized manufacturing type employment uses. So they act as a transition between employment uses or residential uses to some of those deeper, more industrialized types operations.
So does the area that you described for Prestige Industrial, does that include the Panattoni lands?
Yes, it does.
All right. And so what area out there is under the official plan is this M2 designation?
So if you were thinking of the Oak Park interchange, for example, and you were to go further south down along Oak Park as it bends into Hardy Road, that would be an M2 designation, as well as what you typically see in the interior of like Bernida, that would be an M2 designation, and it is surrounded by those prestige employment type uses, again, as that interface between what is visible to the public. They're often located around those gateways, but they act as a buffer between some of that more industrialized heavy manufacturing uses that are typically located in the interior of our employment zones.
And is there any M2 in this area, like for example, north of Power Line Road?
There is. So beyond that interchange, if you were moving further north along Gulf Road, there is M2 there, as well as to the south along the Oak Park down to Hardy Road.
Right. Isn't the danger though that you're allowing clearly what are some commercial uses in a prestige industrial? You could end up with a prestige industrial area that becomes all commercial.
There is limiting commercial uses there. I really should clarify as well that we are still dealing with the County of Brant OP. So this is a term, prestige employ or industrial. We refer to it in the city of Brantford zoning bylaw as prestige employment. These are uses that don't typically fit within our core commercial areas. Linden Park Mall, for example, not uses that you would see in those types of areas, but they sort of fall between that range of employment type uses, but again, not that heavy manufacturing that you'd want to see buffered from, you know, some of those other interface or adjacent land uses.
All right, but how do you deal with that? That's a very large area that's designated prestige industrial. How do you prevent that from becoming just basically one big block of commercial development?
Well, I think, you know, you do that through your zoning bylaw, you do that through site-specific amendments, and you direct some of those core commercial uses to more appropriately zoned commercial uses.
Right.
Like, so what we see permitted here is things like supporting commercial uses and banquet halls, things of that nature, but you wouldn't see a large-scale retail outlet in this type of location.
Right. Is this application perhaps premature, and then perhaps we shouldn't be approving it until we've done the comprehensive zoning bylaw so that we know just exactly how we're divvying up those uses in that larger industrial designated area?
So through the chair, I don't think the application is premature. I think that we've applied appropriate holdings. I think we'll also go through a site plan process as well. These uses are consistent with what we see in our official plan. They're consistent with what we will see in our new zoning bylaw as well. And I think that there's proper controls in place in order to ensure that we get the type of scale of development and look of development that we want to see here.
Okay. So any other general questions before I take Councillor Sluss's amendment? Yes, Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, I guess, through you to either Sean or Nicole or Joe. There's been talk about a gas station. Apparently that was something that could be done here and was removed. Am I understanding that correct?
Through you, Chair, yes, that was originally applied for, but in our analysis, we found that it was not permitted within the official plan designation, and they would have needed an official plan amendment to support that use as well.
Okay, so that was the justification for the removal.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sikoli.
Thank you. Question for, I think it will be Nicole. Do we have any input to the design element of this?
So through the chair to the counselor, yes, we will. We will require an urban design brief be prepared. And we will require that this application go through some site plan control at the appropriate time. And I think, you know, we have a willing applicant that understands that this is a gateway feature into what will be an employment lands area, but then transitioning into residential lands. And so through those controls, we can definitely influence the type of design that we see here, the orientation of the building, restrictions on outdoor storage, as well as things in terms of the design of the parking lot.
Okay, so as staffers, you would put a little more weight onto these gateway properties to ensure that they have that je ne sais quoi that we're looking for as you enter, correct?
Absolutely. That is the intent of why these lands are distinguished from traditional or regular employment lands.
Very good, thank you.
All right, Councillor Van Tilburg, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Where in that vicinity are we zoned to allow for a gas station, service station?
For you, Chair, I'd have to take a look at some zoning mapping and I could get back to you on that.
Well, I'm a little puzzled by the fact that a gas station's not allowed in this transitional setting. We know the public pushes back hard now on gas stations that are even near a residential zone, and yet we have a transitional zone here. Why would a gas station not be allowed as part of a transitional period? I'm a little puzzled because the area that we've set aside looks like we're blocking from having a gas station anywhere near in a zone that needs a gas station, quite frankly.
For you, Chair, just looking at the official plan designation and the permitted uses within that, gas station's not listed as a permitted use, and I'd even followed up with some of our long range planners on that. And they did confirm to me that gas station's not permitted within the prestige employment designation.
So where is it allowed?
I can get back to you on that, but commercial zones, definitely you would see gas station as a permitted use. You know, even I would say probably closer to residential uses, maybe within some of our more major commercial areas. That's where you'd see it as a permitted use.
Can you help us,
And,
Joe?
and there's a commercial aspect.
A second,
to
Councillor Van
this.
Tilburg. I think Joe Muto
Thank
might
you.
be able to help us too on that.
Thank you, Mayor Davis, to Councillor Van Tilburg. So we are on the cusp of advancing the new comprehensive zoning bylaw, which is going to the best of its capacity, implement the vision of the official plan. And with that being said, the discussion in a broader or larger perspective might be to assess that a bit further. We are very close to advancing the text and schedules of that comprehensive zoning bylaw. We're going to go forward to get input from the public and business owners within the community. It will be in front of committee and council for further discussion, and this, by the sounds of it, lends itself to maybe looking at various zones allowing for such uses. Mr. Peever beside me says maybe we're going to need to also consider a lot more charging stations, right?
Yeah.
As we continue through this, and the idea too, in terms of our urban design and our policy and our guidelines and in our zoning is that we're going to be hopefully mandating or looking at the opportunity for a number of businesses to, as of right, provide parking stalls, which will have charging stations required. So these are things that we're just trying to think about now in advance. So really good question. We don't have the specific answer right now. If it is the will of yourself, Mr. Councilor Van Tilburg, or committee to request the service station, that is something that this committee and council can do.
my question is that they would have had to have gone and made an application to change the official plan. What if our official plan, like, servicing may not come for a long time. What if our official plan changes to allow that? Will they have to reapply for something that they asked to have removed?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Tilburg, yet another good question, and this is why this new comprehensive zoning bylaw will be advanced with public input. So the owner is here today, as well as their planning representative, and I know that Mr. Wood is very involved with the going-ons of planning within our community, and is involved with, will be involved with that process for other clients he has within the municipality. And that's something that I would lend back to him to, keep an eye on what's going to happen in the future and preserve his clients' rights as it relates to adding uses rather than coming forward to this committee for additional requests to add the use later on because the OP now allows it or because the new zoning allows it.
All right.
So
I very much
Councillor Van Tilburg, do you want me
appreciate.
to put you down for a second speaking opportunity?
Yes, please.
Okay. I've got a question of clarification for you, Mr. Muto. So this is an application primarily in respect to zoning. Can you, as a committee, can you then turn that into an amendment of an official plan?
Through you, Mayor, no.
No, I didn't think so. Okay, thank you. Any other, all right, Councillor Sluss, do you want to go with your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just moving to seeking a seconder to strike automobile repair as a permitted use.
I think it's automobile repair garage. Yeah. So second by Councillor Sikoli. Debate.
Just
seeing none. Emma, if you please put that. Oh, Councillor Van Tilburg, go ahead. You got to be quicker with your hand raising.
There must be a lag. I disagree with removing the garage proportion off the plan. And the reason is that in these industrial areas, many times things break down and you need an immediate response. And it's nice to have that response right in the vicinity of where you are. The other part is the convenience for those that are working in these areas, coming and going. We run over things frequently, blow our tires, have things that go wrong, and that's just with our own passenger vehicles. And so it's nice to have something that is close by in order to have those repairs done. I run into this all the time in Hamilton, and those types of facilities do exist in similar areas. So I just don't agree with it. I know that that's not probably the position of the majority here. But I'm just saying, as a person of my experience, this is probably a very well-intentioned and beneficial contribution to the community. So I'll just leave it at that.
Councillor Sikoli.
Yes, Nicole, are car repair shops and gas stations allowed in the general employment designation? Just not the prestige employment designation, correct?
Through the chair to the counselor, automobile service centers and repair shops are permitted within the general employment designation. That's correct.
So saying that we won't have a gas station or a service repair shop nearby is sort of a moot point because it's just down the road in the general employment area, correct?
They could establish in those areas, correct?
Fair. So I will be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be supporting it as well. I mean, I agree with both Councillor Sikoli and Councillor Van Tilburg. I agree with Councillor Van Tilburg. In this area, we're going to need repair garages and we're also going to need gas stations. But the question before us is this the lot to do that? And I really don't think it is. This is, it's actually shaped like it's a keystone shaped property and it's in a keystone location. And I think what we want there, what we should see there are something other than repair garages and service stations. And we've heard that the Prestige Industrial area under the official plan is a much larger area. And I'm sure there are lots of other areas within that large configuration where you can have garages and gas stations. And this is kind of the point that I was making, which is this is really the first application we've seen of boundary lands like this. And I apologize to the applicant. You're at the leading edge here. And so that's why you're getting a lot of this discussion. In some sense, this may be premature because if we were doing a whole comprehensive zoning of the entire area, we would be able to answer questions from Council Van Tilburg, which would be, the gas station garage area is wherever, maybe not here, but somewhere else. But hopefully we're going to be seeing that comprehensive zoning bylaw coming forward fairly quickly, because with more applications like this, we're going to be making decisions that have an impact on the larger area without actually seeing what that plan is. So any other discussion? Not seeing any, we'll call the vote on the amendment. Oh, sorry, Councillor Celeste, go ahead.
Oh, you raise a good point, Mr. Mayor, and that is, I thought this entire area, and I'll put this through to Nicole or to Joe. I thought this entire area was going to be planned and developed in blocks with multiple ownerships working together in each block to make sure that you have a cohesive development on a much larger scale. And now we're doing one-offs. So I think the discussion we're having we shouldn't have to be having, because this should have been done in a block format, at least from my opinion. And so can you explain to me how we can pick and choose what's in a block and what's out of a block?
Through the chair to the counselor, the employment areas are not subject to block planning. The block plans are really designed to help coordinate residential neighborhoods. So when you look at the size of the residential neighborhoods and the anticipated scope of residential development that we will see, particularly in the expansion lands, block planning is an exercise in order to integrate those different draft plan applications to ensure that we get consistent roadways, provisions for community services and infrastructure. Those same complicated building blocks don't necessarily apply to our employment lands, so they're not subject to the block planning process. So we can consider those applications on a site-by-site basis. However, I will remind committee that we did include a holding provision here in order to assess the fact that there is still pre-planning underway and that there is no services to this property. And so through that process and clearing those conditions, we will likely see some, or we'll have those controls in place in order to further dictate what we see and how we see it on this property.
I really appreciate that explanation, Nicole, because it was my understanding that this entire area was subject to block planning. I didn't realize it was segregated out to industrial and to residential. That's on me. My apologies. Thank you.
All right, we'll take the vote.
Thank you. The amendment carried on a recorded vote of 4-1. Those in favor, Councilors Celeste, Carpenter, Secoli, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Van Tilburg.
All right, any other amendments? Any other discussion about the resolution as it's amended? Councilor Carpenter, you look like you're about to raise your hand. No, okay. I'd like to say something to the applicant, and again, apologies, it's a little more convoluted than what you'd normally see. We're grappling now for the first time ever with a specific an application for a specific use on a specific property, and so you're kind of like you're the first of many more to come. And actually, comprehensive zoning bylaw hopefully will simplify that process, and there'll be fewer landowners will actually have to come forward with a rezoning application, because the comprehensive zoning will set out what the zoning is for all the property in this area. But I want to commend you though, because behind the scenes, we're working hard on environmental assessment, which will be followed by design work, which will be followed by letting out contracts to construct the stormwater system, the sanitary sewer system, the water system that will allow development to proceed. And if landowners, if they've gone through the block planning process, if they're in residentially designated areas, or like you, in an area that's designated for industrial, if they've done the work before we get the infrastructure in place, and that's going to speed up the building process once the pipes are in place and at this property. So I commend you for being proactive and preparing for the day when we will see the transition of these lands from being agricultural to being the area where the future growth of our community is going to be occurring. So I commend you, and I will support the application. So, any other discussion? Being none, we'll call the vote.
Zoning bylaw amendment PZ 0323 carried on a recorded vote of 5-0. All those voting in favor, Councilors Sless, Carpenter, Van Tilburg, Sequoia, Mayor Davis.
Okay, so we'll now move to a different area of the city and a different planning application. And this is zoning bylaw amendment PZ 1123. And now we're going to the south end of the city. That's at 380, 384 Erie Avenue. And so I'd ask the applicant or agent to, I believe this is coming in virtually.
Through the chair,
I believe it's Bob Phillips.
Bob Phillips is here and I've just promoted him. There he is.
All right, Mr. Phillips, you know the routine. You've got 10 minutes to present on behalf of your client.
Thank you, Mayor Davis and members of the committee. Bob Phillips from Cahoon Engineering, representing Mr. Usman Khan on this application at 380 Erie Ave. The site is located just north of the intersection of Erie and Burkitts. It's a consolidation of two properties there to allow for a 26 unit stacked townhouse development on the property. The current zoning on the property is an R1A, and this application is to modify it to be an R4A to allow for the multiple unit development.
Sorry, Bob, you're going to have to stop. We've lost our quorum. We have, oh, Councillor Van Tilburg's there. Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
No problem.
No one else leave the meeting, please.
So the proposal is to construct 26 stacked townhouse units on this property. We've been through a neighborhood public meeting, and yes, there were a few concerns raised with respect to traffic, not necessarily with respect to this development, but overall the traffic on Erie Ave. And as I understand, the city is working on a traffic plan for that particular area. The application requires 3 or 4 minor amendments to the R4A zone, obviously site specific, some of them relating to lot area, lot frontage, and a couple of side yard and front yard designations. I can go in more detail if you wish, but I think the planning staff report fully supports this development. And we are totally in support of the recommendations within that planning staff. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. We'll see if there's any questions. Any questions? There are no questions, but stick around. Mr. Phillips, of course, you have the reply at the end of after we've heard from staff and the public. So we have in terms of staff comment. Asha, if you could please come forward.
Okay, good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you, Mr. Chair, councilors, staff, and members of the public. My name is Tasha Adair. I am an intermediate development planner with the city, and I will be presenting the zoning bylaw amendment application for 380 to 384 Erie Avenue. That one? No, that. Got it. So this amendment will facilitate the construction of 26 stacked townhouse units within 3 blocks. It will also facilitate site-specific amendments, which will allow for modifications to the permitted uses, the minimum lot area, front yard, and side yard setbacks. So the subject lands are located on the eastern side of Erie Avenue, which is north of Burkett Lane. The subject properties have a combined area of about 4,450 square meters and currently contain 2 single-family dwellings, which will be demolished to facilitate this development. So this is the site plan on the screen here, which details the 26 stacked units. There would be 10 units towards the western block, and the other 2 blocks will have 8 units each, making 26 total. So the lands are designated as residential in the official plan, and the application was evaluated with respect to the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, and the official plan, in which staff have determined that the proposed development does conform. So as Bob had mentioned, the subject lands are currently zoned F-R1B, which is the flood zone residential type 1B. And the proposed zone will be to the flood zone residential medium density type A, which is F-R4A with site-specific designation 89. So in consultation with the ward councilors, a neighborhood meeting was held on August 9th, 2023, as Bob had mentioned. At the time of writing the staff report, no comments have been received from the public. I do want to note, I did get a phone call yesterday afternoon from a neighbor who just had some questions about the development, specifically pertaining to the future road widening of Erie Avenue, as well as pedestrian access into the site. It's my understanding that the member of the public should be here today to ask the questions as well. So as stated, the development will feature site-specific provisions, which will be the permitted uses, minimum front yard, rear yard, and side yard. Sorry, permitted uses, minimum lot area, front yard, and side yard. My apologies. So in terms of development considerations, we've looked at the permitted uses, lot area, front yard, and side yard. So in terms of the R4A zone, it does not currently permit stacked townhouse dwelling units. However, block townhouse dwellings and street townhouse dwellings are permitted. Stacked townhouse dwellings are defined in the zoning bylaw, but are not permitted as of right in any zone without amending the bylaw. The new zoning bylaw project will look into this in further detail and will consider permitting this common built form in the appropriate zones in the future. So in regards to the lot area, the bylaw requires 185 square meters per unit. For 26 proposed units, there will be a lot area of 4,448 square meters, which represents a minimum lot area per unit of 171.1 square meters. So in total, a 13.9 meter reduction per unit is proposed. In regard to the front yard, the bylaw requires 6.0 meters or the established building line, whichever is lesser. The proposed development features a minimum front yard of 4 meters, which represents a total reduction of 2 meters. And lastly, with the side yard, the bylaw requires that a front or exterior wall of a block townhouse shall maintain a side yard of 7.5 meters, and that an exterior wall of a block townhouse dwelling shall maintain a side yard of a minimum of 3 meters. The proposed development is proposing a side yard of 13.34 and 2.4. The 2.4 is what will require the amendment, which will represent a 0.6 meter side yard reduction. And to conclude, the proposed development is considered compatible with the surrounding land uses and will assist in meeting the future needs of the residents of the city. And that would conclude my presentation. I'll happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tasha. Any questions, Councillor Secoli?
Yeah, stacked townhouses, that's a house on top of a house, right?
Through the chair. So a stacked townhouse dwelling includes both a vertical separation between units and a horizontal separation between units. So it'll be like, for example, there'll be 5 units in a row they'll be split this way as well as they'll be split
Yeah.
by level.
Okay, and then each unit is 1 story? Are they like bungalows or are they 2 stories? Like, are these 4 stories high or are they? 2
So
stories
the,
high.
sorry, through the chair. So the proposed height is 3 stories, which is consistent with the zone.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
So in visual aspect, the stacked housing looks the same, similar to town housing. Is that somewhat correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
And how long have stacked housing been around as a term that's been used?
So currently in the bylaw, it is defined as a use, however, it's not permitted as a right. So from my understanding, it has been defined since the bylaw was enacted in 1990.
Oh, so our bylaw is 1990. And every time that we basically looks to people like townhouses, we've been making changes, calling them stacked housing. And through this process.
Yeah, so through the chair. So the bylaw does permit block townhouses, street townhouses, and stacked townhouses. It does define them. However, stacked are not permitted as of right in any zone.
So stacked is already defined but not permitted.
Through the chair, that's correct.
And then this is it when you change it, when you go to change the bylaws, it would stacked be allowed in these areas without having this procedure.
Through the chair. So I have discussed this with long range planning staff who is currently working on the new zoning bylaw draft. And they have confirmed that this will be looked at as a permitted use in the applicable zones. At this point, we don't have information about what specific zones it will be permitted in.
So we're doing this ad hoc, piece by piece then.
Well, through the chair, as of the zoning currently on this property, it wouldn't permit the stacked townhouse units. So for right now, the zone's applicable. We would need this amendment in order to permit it. That's not to say in the future that this zone might change use to have that permitted. We can't speak to that at this time. So right now, this is what would be required to permit the use.
Okay, much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joel, can you expand on that?
Thank you, Mayor Davis. To Councillor Van Tilburg, just to elaborate a little bit more detail on Tasha's response is that you may recall, or your committee members may recall that a couple of years ago, we did a housekeeping amendment to the existing zoning bylaw to add stacked townhouses, as we saw a number of local as well as GTA developers coming into our community and building this form of development. So it is something that is becoming much more popular. A very good example of what's being built now in terms of a stacked product would be the former Canadian Tire site on Colburn there that Cachet has pretty much built out. We're seeing a lot more of these applications rather than doing a very holistic review of the current zoning bylaw. The new comprehensive zoning bylaw coming forward will look at that. We just wanted to ensure that we were being consistent with the definition of what a stacked townhouse unit product was. So what is being contemplated in terms of where such built form will be developed in terms of a stacked product will be along our intensification corridors and the other various kind of townhouse related zones that would permit this going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How many parking spots will be per unit supplied?
So through the chair, the proposed site plan does include 1.5 spaces per unit, and that's at the estimate. That's at the estimate of a block townhouse use. That was just the closest to what we had, which currently permitted. So 1.5 spaces per unit would be approximately 42 spaces provided, whereas 39 are required.
And does that include visitor parking?
From my understanding, I'm not too sure, actually. I might need to defer that to Bob specifically.
Okay, and how many would be accessible parking spots?
So through the chair, the bylaw does require 4% of the required spaces to be accessible, which would be approximately 1.56 spaces for this unit, and 2 are provided.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Scully.
So I feel like this is deja vu. We keep having this conversation every time stacked townhomes comes up. Would townhomes be permitted on this site?
So through the chair, with the existing R4A zone, stacked townhouse, or sorry, not stacked townhouses, block townhouses and street townhouses are permitted.
Okay, so common sense tells me a stacked townhouse looks the same. It has the same feel. It's the same height as a 3-story townhome. It very logically, this fits here. I understand the concept that we have to just dot our i's and cross
Do you
our
have a
t's.
question? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, she's already answered it. Townhomes are allowed here, correct? Does your common sense tell you that stacked townhouses are the same as townhouses and should be permitted here?
So through the chair, the other two permitted types of townhouses are what's allowable. So from my personal judgment and my planning background understanding of this is that stacked townhouses should also be permitted here as well.
Yes.
And that was represented in my staff report.
Now, my next question is stacked townhouses are not the back-to-back townhouses, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, so I just want to make a little correction to staff. When we keep referencing the Canadian Tire site, those are, maybe that's why there's some confusion. The Canadian Tire site are back-to-back townhouses. Those are not stacked townhouses. So it's a little bit different when we're looking at that. Thank you.
Joe, did you want to correct your answer?
Through the chair to the counselor, you're absolutely right that common sense tells us that a townhouse in this built form is appropriate. Your comment on this feels like deja vu. I want to comment on that because you're absolutely right. I think this is an example or a prime example of where we have a building definition that is not contemplated in zones because our bylaw is from 1990 and we are going through a modernization exercise where we will be actually releasing our draft zoning bylaw to the public as of December 1st is our target date. So unfortunately, we have a lot of these things that kind of reoccur because they're reflective of a modern building type with an outdated zoning bylaw model. We do advise the public and the development community that we are bringing forward a new zoning bylaw, but some wish to proceed even under the current zoning that is in place. So that's reflective of what you're seeing here today. The comment around the stacked and the back-to-backs, stacked can be in a back-to-back form. They can be individual. You're right that they have a floor unit, an upper unit. Those can be single, but they can also be in a back-to-back form. This is reflective of the exterior building looks the same. It's the way it's carved up on the inside that's different. And because of the way it's carved up on the inside, we have different parking regulations, essentially. But these types of matters will be cleared up in our new zoning bylaw, and we're likely not to see the same types of applications coming forward in the future.
So just to clarify, the Canadian Tire lot cache, are those back-to-back stacked? Are they back-to-back or just stacked? What are they?
They're both.
Depending on the building. Okay, council, time for one more question. Councilor McCurry, one question.
This is in a flood zone, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
So there won't be any subterranean development. Does that mean these will be 4-story height?
Through the chair, no. So the maximum permitted height in the zoning bylaw is 3 stories, and that is what's being adhered to here. So if it were to be proposed for 4-story, that would require an additional amendment.
So how do you stack them up?
So Councilor McCurry, we've gone a little bit beyond the 10 minutes, so you have to save your questions for the debate and discussion.
I will do that, Mayor, and I'm sure everybody will be waiting in anticipation.
We'll just tremble in anticipation for your questions. So thank you very much, Tasha. That was a very interesting discussion once again about townhouses. So now we're at the stage of the hearing where members of the public who want to speak to the matter, either in opposition to the development application or in support of, can come forward. So do we have any, Emma, virtually, that registered virtually? No. All right. So is there any member of the public who is present today that would like to speak to this application, either in opposition to it or in support of it, please come forward. Good morning, sir. I know you know the routine, having watched the previous application, so you just press the button there to bring the red light on. And then if you would state your name and address, and then you'll have 10 minutes.
Dennis Curnow, 378 Erie Avenue, so right next door to this development. I just have some questions going through the report that was posted on Friday on the City of Brantford website. The designation for the designation of Erie Avenue is listed here as a major arterial road with a road allowance widening according to Schedule 13 of 36 meters. On the official plan, Schedule 12, the map shows Erie Avenue as being a minor arterial road. So is the designation of Erie Avenue changing from a minor arterial road to a major arterial road? Which I'm not sure if it would have an impact or not on this development. I'm sorry if I'm taking a little bit longer, but
No, you got 10 minutes and you can.
I know, but I don't want to blow it all, so. So policies for major arterial roads where possible, or where feasible, pardon me. Residential development shall access major arterial roads through other roads within the identified road hierarchy. Individual access to major arterial roads shall be discouraged. So this property is going from 2 entrances servicing 2 households to 1 entrance servicing 26 different units. So to me, that is kind of against the intent for a major arterial road, which is what it says in the proposal. Minor arterial road is, of course, slightly different, but for a major arterial road, this is something that is supposedly to be discouraged. So I know there's also the apartment development proposed at 264 Erie Avenue, which I'm not sure of the number. I think it was 40 apartments or whatever it was, which is also going to bring in quite a few more vehicles exiting onto a major arterial road, if that is correct. Also, just I guess out of general curiosity, is there a planning period or a timeline for the widening of Erie Avenue, which is listed as being a proposed widening to 36 meters, which according to the transportation plan, arterial road of up to 40 meters would be 5 lanes, 2 lanes each direction, and either a central median or a central left turn lane, plus the additional sidewalk, bike paths, buffers, whatever is being asked for. I know this would have an impact, obviously, on the front yard for the townhouse complex. And also for obviously all the houses and businesses along this Erie Avenue. And this proposal is for the widening is from Market Street out to the city limits. So fairly major reconstruction, obviously. Also, as part of the proposal, I know there was input from 6 Nations for all the different groups that were asked for input. And their request was for 10 trees to be planted for every tree removed on the property. I was curious as to how many trees are going to be removed from the property, and will this be followed, or what will be the replacement rate? At my count, there's probably about 9 trees that would be removed, fully mature trees, a lot of them walnut and whatnot. And one other question was just on pedestrian access to the 2 blocks at the back. Obviously, the 5-block unit at the front would have pedestrian access directly off the sidewalk there. So fairly easy access, but any pedestrians going to the back 2 blocks, is there sidewalk access being built back into the complex, or do they just walk in on the driveway along with any traffic entering and exiting the unit? I mean, in general, I'm not happy about this going in next to my property. Obviously, I go out every morning on my back deck, let the dog out, the dog runs around in the yard, and I get to look out at that nice green space, countryside, etc. So no, I'm not particularly happy about it and the impact it will have. But in addition to that, I also have these other concerns regarding widening traffic and all the other things that go along with it. And that's about all I have, so I will end it there.
Just, sir, how do you spell your surname?
C-U-R-N-O-W.
Curnow, okay. And so I've made a list of your questions, so I'll be sure to raise those with the applicant when they do their reply or with staff. I generally like to do that as a chair to try and get an answer to your questions.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in the road widening, since last week or the week before, there was a survey crew going out on Erie Avenue doing extensive surveying on everyone's property, up on our porch sort of thing, and people across the street's porch. So I'm assuming that has something to do with future road widening development, getting accurate locations for everything.
Okay, so does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Curnow? Okay, so Mr. Curnow, you were here for the other ones, you know the procedure. We'll now ask the applicant to respond to some of these questions, and then we'll have the members will then debate the proposal.
Okay.
Okay.
You want me to sit back down there again?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Okay.
Again, thanks very much. So, Mr. Phillips, I see you're there, and you have now 5 minutes to respond to issues raised since you made your initial presentation. And we just heard from a neighbor a number of questions. Hopefully, you'll be able to answer some of them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the committee. This is a site that's its only available access is to Erie Ave, 2 properties, and yes, there were 2 driveways initially. Through our consultation with the city, the number of accesses to the property were limited to the single access. We understand the official plan requirements about providing land for improvements to Erie Ave, but I'll have to defer the actual construction / road widening to staff to address. There was lots of discussions about the stacked townhouse definition, so I'm not going to go into those very much. This development has to go through another process, being site plan approval. Through that process, the requirements for tree planting on the property, and that's more than just tree planting. It's a fully developed landscaping plan, which will be requirement of that process and go through scrutiny by city staff, and we do support that process. We understand the comment about pedestrian access to the back units, and again, through that site plan approval process, there'll be consideration of that. These properties are located within special policy area of the Grand River Conservation Authority where no basements are permitted. The units are all above grade and will be constructed like that. I believe that hits all the sort of highlights. If I've missed something, please just remind me and I will try to answer the questions. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Mr. Phillips? So I got two questions for you. Bob, I understand the site plan process, but can you tell us yes or no, is the intent to have sidewalks for pedestrians, taking them right back to the back of the property?
Obviously, the current concept did not consider that, but we will engage to see if we can accommodate that.
Okay. And we heard that there are probably 9 trees going to be removed. Maybe not, I guess it depends on what your site plan looks like. What is the general intent then in respect to replacing trees that will have to come down?
There'll certainly be a replanting plan. I planting it or replanting at a 10-to-1 ratio is obviously very difficult on a site of this size, but and I don't believe that's the city's normal requirement. It's usually in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 to 1, but that will be negotiated during that site plan process. The landscaping plan that will be prepared will have consideration of buffering to the neighbors. That was raised at the neighborhood meeting, and we certainly acknowledge it. And I expect you'll see a very robust landscaping plan for this site.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Okay, so. Yeah, I see we have one other person in the, sort of the back. Did you intend to speak to this matter? No, okay. All right, so if I can have Emma, if you would please put up on the screen the proposed. So if I can get a mover and seconder to get this on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Sluss, seconded by Councillor Sikoli. Open for debate. Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you. Through you, I'll resume my inquiry about stacked townhouses. So we're not exceeding 3 stories in height. Could you explain physically how we have 2 townhouses that don't exceed 3 stories when you can't have any subterranean development?
Through the chair to the councillor, I would defer that question to Bob as the engineer on the project.
Bob can't answer.
Joe, can you?
Sure, I maybe give a little bit clarification, Mayor Davis, to Councillor McCreary. What the current bylaw allows, and it's no different than the existing zone that's on the subject lands right now that has an F prefix, is that it looks at an ultimate water table elevation. So although they're going to be on grade or slab on grade development, there will be some allocation for digging into the ground to allow for some of those mechanical units, right? So in terms of how the building permit process advances, Bob and his engineering team and architect will need to outline that for the CBO and the building department in order for them to be approved for occupancy. So they will be on slab on grade with some dug out area for the HVAC and mechanical systems, and then 3 stories from the principal grade to the peak of the roof.
So does that then mean that the stacked in a single building, a stacked townhouse, the bottom unit will share one of the stories with the top unit?
Through the mayor to Councillor McCreary, there's been a lot of dialogue and discussion, and I know we're going to start seeing a lot more of these. And if I erred on the Canadian Tire site, we can go further down the street on Park Road North where there are stacked products. They are currently being built within the municipality and within our community. I do know that through our comprehensive zoning bylaw, we are preparing figures for the public and elected officials to get a better understanding of what it looks like. And it's not just a, Brantford only concern. We see this in Hamilton, we see this in Mississauga. And it's just as Ms. Wilmot said, is just something that's new, right? And developers are continuously modifying and modernizing, the built form product. So if it's not back to back, it's stacked, or it's multiplex type developments. And there's all these other different terms out there. So perhaps it might be upon me to provide some figures and illustrations to this committee and council that will maybe help alleviate some of these additional questions we're hearing today.
I'm just having difficulty understanding how 2 + 2 = 3.
Sorry, sir, the time period has passed for members of the public to provide their input. So we'll move to Councillor Van Tilburg.
Yeah, I got a few questions here. In site plan discussion of trees, is that flexible from that 10-1? Is there a flexibility of negotiations regarding what the city proposal is? It's something like 2 or 3-1 versus what was requested at 10-1? Do you have that discussion at site plan?
Through the chair to the councillor, yes, that's correct. So the city is actually, as you may be aware, working on a new private tree bylaw that is currently being going through like a consultation phase with the public. It is a recommendation from Six Nations. It's something that we tend to see on most development sites. They are looking for the 10-1. As the applicant indicated, it's not always feasible. So we will look to see through the landscape and replanting plan what exactly needs to come down and then what exactly can be replaced in its put back in its place. And oftentimes it's not as clear cut as strictly a 10-1 ratio, but we often look at the size of the diameter of the tree as well as the age and height of the tree as well. So there are a couple of other factors that we take into consideration during the site planning process.
All right, thank you very much. And with regard to road widening, which was mentioned, and quite frankly, I'm hearing it very often along from residents in Eagle Place and along Erie Ave. We have multiple apartment buildings going up along Erie Ave. We have multiple, whether it's townhouses, block houses, or stacked houses coming in along Erie Ave as these single 1- and 2-family homes get moved into 26 and 40 family homes. That obviously is in our plans and has to happen. When are we going to start engaging with that so that the public knows what is happening? We have like 5 developer subdivisions down around Burkett's Lane happening. We're going to see a massive influx of traffic once these are all built. Are we going to have a two-lane road? Or are we going to address this beforehand? What's the plan on the road widening?
Through the chair to yourself, Councillor Van Tilburg, just to clarify, the road widening that is being proposed to be taken here is about 3 meters, and it would give you a total road allowance of approximately 26 meters in that area. Through the transportation master plan, it wasn't identified that this road would need to be 4 lanes. However, as development occurs and the transportation master plans are updated, they'll re-identify if work needs to occur to increase the amount of traveled lanes. Currently, council had just recently approved and had implemented a left turn lane along that area, which will generally get us by for as these developments are occurring. But if more and more occur, this would need to be revisited to understand ultimately would additional through lanes need to be included on Erie Ave?
So how many homes do we have to hit? With vehicles, we know how many vehicles are going into each units. How many homes do we have? What's the figure that says we have to deal with this? When do we hit that figure and when do I see a number for what that figure is?
Through the chair, to Councillor Van Tilburg, I don't have a number of how many homes in the area would trigger an upgrade to Erie Ave. However, again, when the transportation master plan is updated in the future, that is something that would be looking at that general high level of how many units, how many homes, and how many trips are we expected to see.
And when would the next change to the transportation master plan be happening?
Through the chair, it is something that city staff are looking at the timing of the transportation master plan update. And that would be something that'd be coming through kind of a capital project program.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other discussion? Councilor McCrory for the second time.
When I'm looking at the size of units, can staff indicate what the approximate dimensions are of each of these stacked pair? Looks to be about 30 feet wide, maybe.
Through the chair to the counselor, if you just give us a second, we'll pull that plan. Through the chair to the counselor, there's 6 meters in width.
That's about 20 feet.
Yes,
Okay. And then they would be 60 deep. So you've got 1,200 square feet on each floor. Give or take.
about that, yeah.
Okay. So much as I loathe to do it, I'm going to return to my original question regarding the layout of these units. Clearly, planning staff must have an understanding of how this works physically within the walls. So can you explain to me how we end up with 2 units over 3 floors within the demising walls of each of those units?
So through the chair to the counselor, so from our understanding, they're not equally divided in terms of their internal layout. And I think I think from a basic understanding, we tend to think of them as sort of being equally divided. But in this scenario, when you have an area where there's for the most part, we can say that there's restrictions of mechanical below grade. There may be some option for use in a crawl space of certain elements, but mostly not.
So would
the ground
unit
floor
be 2 stories and 1 unit 1 story, for instance?
Split, yes. So the ground
Okay.
floor unit has the master bedroom on the 2nd floor, and the rest of the 2nd floor is the secondary units has the kitchen, and then the 3rd floor has the bedrooms.
That was
That's
the answer.
kind of how they're broken up in
The answer I was looking
interior.
for. Thank you. Yep.
I can actually picture it in my head, like that interior of that stacked townhouse. So any other discussion? Councilor Van Tilburg.
I just want to make things clear to the public that are viewing, as there's really been no 3D diagrams around the property that they can visually see. One is to clarify that the Canadian Tire is stacked townhouses. In fact, it was the first time I'd heard of the concept. That was brought to me about 6 years ago. The other part is that for those watching, that this development, just to clarify from staff, this development does not have back-to-back units.
Can someone clarify that for me?
Through the chair to the counselor, they are not back to back.
They are not back-to-back, but they are stacked, correct?
Correct.
And that's why we're here. Just making sure so that people don't get any misconceptions, because yes, stacked townhouses can be back-to-back as seen in Canadian Tire lot. Thank you.
All right, I'll call the vote.
Thank you. Thank you. Zoning bylaw amendment PZ 1123 carried on a recorded vote of 5-0. Those in favor, Councilors Sluss, McCrory, Van Tilburg, Sequoia, Mayor Davis.
All right, so we have no other planning applications before us today, and we have no registered delegations to speak to us. There are no resolutions, there are no notices of motion, and therefore we're adjourned to the December Planning Committee meeting, which is scheduled for, I believe it's December 13th.
I believe you are correct.
Yes, okay. We're adjourned, and then at 9:30, not 9 o'clock.